Yeah, if you're open to sharing all this rawness, the questions, the discussion points, and then, and I'm perfectly okay with saying something that may turn out to be, I changed my mind on later, or I feel wrong about, or whatever the case may be. But, and there are plenty of times when I even said stuff and put it out as a recording where I go, oops, that was not a factually accurate piece of information. I don't even bother correcting it.
But what about, I mean, I know like on podcasts that there's some people say some pretty fucked up shit on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
But what about like when you're telling stories, like for instance, I was telling a story about my uncle, my nephew, and how my dad said, you look like a monkey, and there was like, and then you told me a story about, you were talking about
oops.
Now,
Yep.
Is that okay for us to have that on there?
I think it's perfectly valid. It's part of the raw nature of who we are. And the thing that, maybe it's more willing to say, because we know other people may be listening now, you might just say, look, that's not me anymore. It's what I did at that time. I mean, I've evolved. Part of the process is to show that we're just not pigs, that, we learn from our mistakes, and in fact, that was a story of learning for me, that I did not realize how cruel what I said was. And part of it was because who I was at the time.
Right. Well, what about other things like blowing our noses? Like, is this raw? I got my fingers in my nostrils right now, and
mine is louder. Mine was louder, dude.
Oh, is this a mine is bigger thing?
Sword fight.
We're really evolved men here.
Totally.
I do need to figure out how to find a background, although I did find this Victorian room as a background.
Well, I think maybe these will be introduction discussions for us to work with and understand what we might want to be careful about. But we probably need to get authentic BS backgrounds. And a logo. I want a logo, man.
Wait, what is this? The account owner can also watch this. I don't need it. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's it was asking if it was okay if you recorded. I'm okay with it, but I don't think Dustin is, so I'm not sure.
He can forget him. Ignore that guy, I tell you.
I have to. I'm learning to. All right, let's get serious. Okay, so I mean, you asked me like 3 questions, and I was like, the first we talked about, what do you want the world to know? Like, we're on a rock hurtling through space, so nothing really matters. But I had some pretty powerful events happen to me this week, and it's not necessarily quite important to get into that. It's just, I guess it gave me perspective, and it made me kind of like see myself. Not that I haven't been seeing these things and working on them for a while, but it really helped me. Like, I mean, I just wrote the answer to your 3 questions like an hour before our meeting. So basically what I'm saying is I let the whole week happen.
That's very good. Have you ever heard of the word perturbation?
Yeah.
It's kind of like percolating, but it's a little bit more subtle. Like the water when it's about to boil is percolating. Forget it. But percolating is when it's actually boiling, but never mind.
Perturbation. Okay.
So now you got me looking the word up because I'm wondering if I even said that word correctly, but perturbation.
I think I got a caffeine thing going on in the back of my head here.
Not predation, buddy. Perturbation.
I'm gonna take you. I can see you. You can see me. I've got the phone, so we can keep talking. I'm gonna grab an ibuprofen here, right? I was talking to
Oops.
she's like, are all his meetings 2.5 hours long? And I was like, no, that's just what we do. She's like, I need something really condensed. And I was like,
Well,
she has
to stop prejudging, and if she wants to reach out and talk to me about the details, she can.
Hey, my mom always said you have to prejudge before you can judge. It's true.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay. Oh, you're looking that word up. I'll wait.
Yeah, and I'm not having any luck with this thing. I think it's perturbation, but I have to, but but anyway, forget about the word. The idea is that things will vibrate inside of our experience. So is in the mind world, we have this thing called reticular activation, where something's now planted a visual seed in our brain, and then for the rest of the week, we're connecting the dots on things that we never would have done before because it's suddenly part of our focus.
Right.
Historically, or probably historically in our physiology, that was there so we would, when a little black thing moved in the bushes, we knew, oh, that might be a leopard, let's leave, but now we use it in different ways for a part, in many ways, an evolutionary way. So anyway, it's great. There's nothing wrong with I did a presentation in 2019 to a live audience with about 100 and some odd people, or 200 people in the room. And I was originally going to speak in a certain way, and I had a video, a stage partner who evaporated. I won't name names now because we're recording, but the idea is my stage partner evaporated. You know who she is, but she evaporated from the picture. And I almost wasn't going to go and do this presentation. And then I said in the last minute, I was going to go. Now, lots of other things came out of that journey. I won't, I got sick on that trip and all kinds of other things that happened. But I did not actually write my presentation until 15 minutes before stage time.
Yeah.
I went to my hotel room, I bring up my slides, and I cranked out like a dozen slides in 10 minutes. And then I went downstairs with my thumb drive. And it was probably one of my best presentations to that date, because it was perturbating. I have to now I have to look up this word because I can't even spell it. He keeps coming up with perturbation, like being perturbed. I'm hopefully not perturbed. Hopefully I'm not that mentally challenged emotionally that I'm perturbed, but anyway, but it was boiling inside. It was simmering, or whatever other phrase we want to use. And it really made for a high quality thing, but it wasn't for lack of attention. I wasn't by the seat of my pants. I just was like, on the drive down, I was thinking about it, and I had put it aside. I was eating a fast food sandwich, and I was thinking about it and put it aside, and I still didn't know, what am I going to tell these people? What am I going to talk to them about?
Right.
And I wanted it to be inspiring. So the most sad thing, and it's because sometimes I still get body conscious, but the most sad thing in there is that I had this developing belly.
Right.
I wasn't my best physical shape at the time. So
well, I mean, we're all what is it? Works in progress. So I was seeing about the backgrounds again. I think you said I have to download one.
Well, we can create one that's subject to these discussions if you want. Okay. So if you want to have authentic BS,
or I was thinking authentically, or I don't know, like I like the word raw too, authentic raw but that doesn't quite go together.
Or you
very
could say
well.
raw BS
Yeah, raw BS.
or just raw
I think
talk.
authentic BS though. Authentic. I think authentic. mm,
Or
I
you
think
can you
raw
can call it
fits in that one.
authentic and raw.
Yeah. Whatever. We'll figure that out. It'll
Well, we'll
perturbate.
let it perturbate.
Yeah. So so let me just try to kind of answer these questions. And I don't really answer them all. I just, what do you want the world to know is your first question. And I don't really go into this. I think like basically what I wrote here is the answer to the first and second question. And the third one doesn't really need to even be answered. But it's three questions were, what do you want the world to know? Why do you want the world to know it?
Mm-hmm.
And then why am I the one to tell them? So with the events of the week, I kind of came up with this. And I mean, just you could say 1,000 things that sound like what I wrote down here, but I think it kind of, I originally went to this idea that I want to help men transition from boyhood to manhood, that's my niche. But I'm learning that is that from what I heard this kind of 2-hour call from one of those coaching schools, and I got a lot of really good information about that, and people were like talking about their niche, and she was like, oh, you can really dial that down. You can really you can dig into that, like make it more specific. So I think this might be a little bit more specific. So the answer is that what do you want the world to know is that men have the ability to be men. And that's very loose, but this is what I came up with. As men, we have been taught to be hard, but never to be men. A man is tough, a man is strong, a man does not cry, etc. This is not a man, but instead a boy who has put up a hardened shell to protect himself. So the other thing is we all have a story. What is it and how do we get past it is important. And the answer would be that we soften up. As men, we have to soften up. And that means we drop the story. And we understand that there has to be a piece with understanding. I think is a key thing, is that we may have had no choice in what happened to us as children, but we are 1,000% responsible as adults. So let me put as adults. Regardless of the shit that happened to us, we have to take 1,000% responsibility for our lives and for who we are. And so I say, yeah, a man takes full responsibility for everything in his life. Once this happens, the shields and walls drop. The ego takes a back seat. And that's really all I wrote. But I was texting my friend Don, who is in his 90s in Seattle, or I mean, he's in Hawaii. And I was like texting him while this was happening. And I was telling him that, I'm kind of making this career. I'm going for a new career path. And he asked what it was. And I said, life coaching. I was just explaining, the process a little bit. And this quote that popped into my head, not a quote I heard from somewhere else, just something I came up with. Maybe I did hear it somewhere. I don't know. But I just said, something's got to give. Like he said, I hope it works out for you. Like, I wish you success. Like, something somebody says, like, well, something's got to give. Eventually something's got to give. But I said something's got to give, and that something is me. And I think that really sums up that transition from being a boy to becoming a man. With everything I said, if we, like, I spent so much time in my previous marriage and other relationships defending myself, protecting myself, my ego. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, there's always an excuse. I wasn't actually just looking at the fact that I made that happen. I'm the reason this conflict or this person is mad at me, whatever. And so I think if I don't know if there's a way to, like, maybe the word is surrender, or the word is, I don't know what it is. But it's this idea that, like, if you just drop your shit, drop your story, let go of it, you just, like, say, okay, I'm done. I surrender and you embrace the fact that you are the person who is in charge of, or is responsible for your life and what has happened in your life, and you can accept that, then you can kind of start fresh from there. And there's something really liberating about that idea of, like, if I'm responsible, then I can make that change. I don't have to let all those stories, I don't have to let all that stuff that happened in my past, I don't even need to unpack it. I don't need to, I can see that it's there, but nevertheless, I can take responsibility for how I am today and how it's affected me, and learn from that and grow from it.
Yeah. There's something you just said I thought leads to a really great visual. You don't need to unpack whatever that was in the past. That's the story or whatever the case. Just treat the story as luggage, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to unpack it in order for you to leave it behind.
You
Like,
don't need to
just
unpack,
leave the
yeah.
luggage and go. Throw it overboard, whatever we got to do. I mean, when you think about what we're really doing is it's like, I know I don't need the luggage to keep the history of it. The luggage in and of itself is really just the emotions.
Yeah.
So if I can release the emotions, I don't need to know what's inside that luggage anymore. You know, I'll remember that I had luggage. I'll remember whatever the story is that gave me the luggage, and I'll probably remember throwing it overboard. But I don't need to unpack it before I dispose of it. You just said something I just thought was brilliant. So,
yeah. Well, I've spent so much time with therapists, and, like, really trying to understand, like, this hurt that I feel from my childhood, and how do I get in there and dig in,
well, if you had a therapist, if you're, I don't know if you're still doing this, that kind of discussion, but if you have, most of the time, therapists are all about unpacking the luggage.
yeah, right.
They spend so much time going, well, let's go over the story. And once you can, and it takes so long
Right,
for
right.
the human frame to adjust to that kind of storytelling, because usually the storytelling just reopens wounds.
Well, that's just it. And I'm like, God, if I just completely shift and go, I am responsible for raising a child, and I can have all these hurts come up. I can have all these traumas from my childhood, and I can put it on my son. I can just,
and you are putting it on your son, right?
generationally keep. And so I have all these things that I developed as protections, and these kind of neurotic, kind of like my anxiety and my overwhelm and my this kind of just frenzy I get into, and he's seeing that, he's witnessing it, and he's me as a child that had no say in what happens to him. Like it's repeating the process. And I just realized that this week, and I was like, I need to get a hold of that. I need to take 100% responsibility for that. And I need to heal that. And I need to end that cycle now, so it doesn't happen to his children. And so I really think that is what is I think that is where I want to, obviously it needs to be polished, but that is what I want to help other. Let me think about what I want to say here. I want to help other people know and understand.
Okay. Now,
not just men, because even the idea of men, like I said, in men's groups, I don't even like that word. I like the idea of this. I like this idea of masculine and feminine energy, and I kind of want to keep on looking at that a little bit later, because it's something that both men, women, or whatever, we all possess it. And some of us lean into one more than the other. And it's just who we are.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, sure, I there's a part of me that would love to be one of those people who has plants and beautiful things in my house. And I kind of was more like that when I was younger. Have a little altar over here, or, whatever, these beautiful things. And now it's like, there's nothing in here. And like, good God, if I had to take care of something, I can't, I don't want to be responsible. So, I mean, there's a lot of masculine energy there. There's not the beauty of life, feminine energy there. And this guy dated.
I don't think that's a fair assessment of what masculine and feminine might actually be.
Just an example.
So that the guy has cares less about green thumb and things like. I think that's maybe a little bit of a.
That's not what I mean. Okay. Though I'm kind of quoting, and I could completely get it wrong, and I apologize, David, if I am. But the book in the David Data book I mentioned before, he talks about the masculine and the feminine energy, and how the feminine energy is fully embracing life, whereas the masculine energy is going towards death, where it's this a nothingness, almost trying to go towards nothingness.
I guess I could accept that. I mean, if we look at masculine and feminine as yin and yang, which are interconnected, maybe energy is not the right word, but interconnected properties of existence. So the masculine could be not necessarily driving towards nothingness, but it could be driving towards, it's all about harmony between those two energies. If we had all one or all the other, it would probably result in forms of failure. So the idea is that using that description you just gave, whereas being masculine kind of leads to nothing or emptiness or whatever the case may be, and that the feminine leads towards nurturing and growth and maybe even abundance in all possibilities. But if you had all possibilities and you never experienced nothingness, then how would you know what you have? How would you even be able to define the quality of that? So I think the beautiful part about describing masculine and feminine the way you just did is it's describing the fact you need the harmony of it. And I would even use the word balance, because I think there's so much more to it than just 1 and 0 or yes and no. I think it's experience 1 and experience 2 that orbit each other, for lack of a term,
Mhm.
So, okay.
Well, there's this description. I feel like, oh, that's what it is. Sun is like, my ear's getting all hot. Like the sun's coming down, and is my speaker heating up and about to blow up in my ear? So I just want to like add one more thing. So there's this idea that like there's a picture that David Data uses, and I believe he said it's usually older versions of this image, and you can't really see it if you I can't really see it if you Google it, but it's I mean, you could see it, but not the what he said, like the original versions of it. But there was, I believe it's Shiva is standing above I don't know who it is. I don't think could it be Krishna? I'm not sure. This is where I get things completely wrong. But the point is that the god, or no, yeah, Kali, I think it's the goddess Kali, is standing above Shiva, or like I said, Krishna or whatever. And Kali's got this crazy look on her face, her tongue sticking out, sharp teeth, like 6 arms. She's holding a head in one arm, like a sword in another one, or whatever, a scepter, and or whatever those curved blade. It doesn't matter. She's just got all this crazy shit in her hands, and she's got one foot on his chest, and she's just the conqueror. She is. I think she's the goddess of death. And here's another thing I could be completely getting wrong, but she represents, in this image, she represents life, in the sense like everything that life throws at us. And it's just complete and total chaos. And there's this, and what he is saying is like, I believe in that image, it's that is the feminine energy. It's embracing it all. It's everything that life has to throw at us.
I almost can't say this with any authority or authenticity, but I was going to say is that from what little I know about that Hindu god Kali is that may be the embracing of both the feminine and the masculine in the same entity.
Well,
because she giving her that label, let's just say this she is in fact the she of the feminine nature. She's also responsible for destruction and violence, and also sexuality and nurturing and maturing and all these other things. So it seems to me that's like the embodiment of our discussion about the yin and the yang, the fear and the love, these and these are all spectrum connected type things. They're not pure ones and zeros, which is like, which is what gets so simplified. Yin and yangs are opposites.
Well, right.
They're embracing that. Without each other, they're nothing. So they're not quite opposites. They are composites or something else. I mean, the English language probably will completely let us down in terms of fully describing these things. But as you're describing Kali even further, is that the Kali is this Hindu goddess, is so much more complex than any 2 or 3 properties. It's like she represents almost everything but creation.
Right. Well, let me yeah, and I'm not really getting to the point because I don't have a very.
Well, we started this conversation with talking about your messaging being around the masculine.
Oh, no, I know that. Give me 1 second, Brian. That's not what I mean. It's
okay.
Give me a second. I just wanted to see, I'm Googling something here. I just want to see here. Yeah, so Kali, it's definitely Kali. And I don't know that, okay. I don't know that in the book, if David Data, I don't think what he's doing is is giving any sort of explanation for what he could be, but I don't think he's giving any. I don't know if he's just saying that this is a perfect image that represents what he's talking about, or if there's actually aspects of this image that back up what he's saying. But the point being is that the goddess represents all that life has to throw at us, the ugly, the beautiful, the whatever. Now, the person underneath her, so he's saying that that's the feminine. The person underneath her who's laying there dead is the masculine. And
okay,
this,
so
and
maybe
this
it's the story, maybe our yin and yang here. I get it.
Maybe, but, and this is where we get into, like, apparently the older images show this and not the modern, not the newer images, or only some of them. I don't know what the story is. He said, but in the he said there are versions of this image where he is laying there dead underneath her, but he's got a boner.
Well, she has sexuality attached to her. That much I know.
Right.
That's what I know about Kali, is that she's
Right.
the goddess of violence and sexuality, or in broad strokes.
Right. And exactly. And
Which is about, which also includes a possible creation story, right?
Sure,
So.
sure. And his point is that even in death, the masculine has the ability. So we're going towards death, feminine, I mean, geez Louise, masculine's going towards death, feminine's going towards life. But even in death, if masculine can learn to dance with the feminine, that we can, the point being is that in death, even in death, that his heart on represents his ability to dance with the feminine energy.
Okay.
And so I just thought there was something really powerful in that. Like,
so in terms of that message, there's that
right.
we're talking about, is what do you want the world to know? So what if it was something, and this may be worth playing with, or maybe something thinking about instead of talking further about now. I'm going to leave you in charge of what's the right way to go about this for you. But what if your message to the world is that there is a healthy masculine form?
Right.
They're the one that dances with Kali, as opposed to running away from it, or succumbing to it, or whatever the case may be. So, it's like, I look at my path from narcissism. My narcissism was a curated masculine energy. Can't be wrong, always right. Always needed nice looking women on his arm. I may not have, anyway, I'll censor that thought for a second. Just going to keep on going with the other parts of the narrative. So I would say that would be a kind of masculinity that is toxic.
It's false. Yeah.
It's not authentic, and therefore toxic. So what we're really talking about is that there is a healthy masculine framing around one's journey as a male that can change everything for the better. Transformative masculine energy, as opposed to destructive masculine energy.
Absolutely. I mean, if we all, that's in my what I wrote, my idea of softening up. There's something that Lujan, my teacher Lujan Matus, like, said to me, and I didn't get it at the time, or maybe I got it, I just couldn't embrace it. But he said to me, I don't know, once or twice, he's like, you need to man up, or something along that lines. And and then I was like, what, and then he said, what I mean, I don't mean you need to be a man, you need to be toughen up, you need to, like that. He meant, he said, what I mean is you need to soften up. And that's kind of what I think what you're saying, what you said there, it just reminds me of like if we learn to soften up as men, be vulnerable and not embrace all that toxic shit that you just mentioned, like that would end the cycle of this, abuse, I guess is a
Yeah, I get
a word
abuse,
that
maybe the result, right? It's not
yeah,
necessarily the intention.
it's I remember when I was in Hawaii, like we take him
Ooh.
to one of his checkups and he wasn't even one yet. And this father came out. I was outside for some reason. I don't know if I was on the phone, but this father came out with like his boy, and his boy was like crying. He was terrified. He was traumatized. He was just very, very upset. And his father was extremely triggered and just giving this kid a hard time. And I mean, this kid I don't remember. He was a little boy, but his father was upset at him and shaming him and all the other shit he was doing. It was fucking disgusting, because this kid was afraid and upset because he had to get a shot. And the dad noticed me looking at him and he kind of corrected himself. But I was like, it brought up a lot in me, and I felt a little paralyzed. Like I was afraid, like I didn't know what to, like, I was just like, what the fuck? Like this guy, I mean, what do I do? Call this guy out? Like, I don't know. I didn't know what to do in that situation.
What do you think you would do now? I'm just curious.
Well, I just let him know that I was looking at him, that he was being witnessed.
Right. That maybe is as assertive as you can be without bringing the worst of him out.
Yeah. I mean, what do I say? Hey, you're traumatizing your kid, because that guy was all ego right there.
Mm-hmm.
He had whatever his shit coming up about his child being upset about getting a shot. But I'm like, fuck, how often in some sort of weird, fucked up way have I've never been like that with Nico, with him getting a shot right now. I totally get it. But there's probably ways in which I've been that guy. I mean, there has to have been many times where I was that guy. And I know there is. Like, I even have stuff coming up for me when I say that, because I know there's times where I was in my own shit and
Yep.
not seeing the child in front of me. Like, I've been guilty of like, it's like always said, you're guilty of humanizing the dog. She's a dog. She's not going to change. She's not doing it on purpose. It's like my personality didn't mesh well with the dog. I mean, what does that say about me? Or I'm guilty of thinking that my 5-year-old child, or whatever age he was at the time, is 15 years older than he is. And so I think that is going full circle. That is the softening up that we need. We need to be compassionate. We need to be caring and vulnerable, and as men. And it's not about being tough. It's like telling your kid men don't cry. It's like that.
I grew up that universe, right? We don't cry.
Yeah.
And I can count on probably one hand how many times I cried as an adult because of that sort of crap story that was installed in me. And but now I cry much more liberally. I should say much of my adult life. Then there's the things that change. Like I remember just recently watching a story about a plane crash in 1991 that happened in Los Angeles.
Right.
And did I share the story with you already? I might have. I might
I
have,
don't
but
know.
I'll just kind of make it a short one just in case. So what ended up happening is there was a prop commuter plane with 12 people on board on a runway when a jetliner came and landed on top of it.
Oh my God.
And like 30 people died out of 120 people or something like that. 89 survived out of the experience, and the pilots were everybody on the commuter plane was gone, and then because of how the plane landed and crashed, so a lot of the people on the front end of the plane died of the jetliner.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it turned out there was some confusion that fell into place, like the perfect storm of stuff fell into place for the air traffic controller. So she was held responsible for killing 33 people. Now, it was an accident. They didn't charge her, nothing like that, but that was her last day on the job. She could not take it in. She had such overwhelm from the experience. When I learned this part of the story, I started crying. Not just because of the loss of 33 people, but because of the weight that she had. She's still alive. I did some research on her. She's still alive. She still works in the airline industry. She's taken her experiences and used it to help transform and make it flying safer and other things that have taken place. And by the way, what happened in 1991 would be almost impossible today, because back then everything was done with these tiles that were put in there and you kind of moved them around. Part of the confusion was she was looking for a tile that was never given to her. So there was also system error, which is why she was never charged. It was system error, and then it just got compounded by her, whatever. So she didn't do anything deliberately. It wasn't ill will or malfeasance per se. It was just an accident. But I still cried for her. I still cried for the weight of what that is. That would not have been me 20 years ago. So you get the chance to do this kind of development, to start to have, you can reach into that compassion and empathy that maybe gets blocked by toxic masculine energy, and start to be able to be authentic and real and understand things from a completely different perspective than you might ever experience yourself.
Yeah.
So so I love this whole concept that you have, is how to, you're using the word softening, and I don't have, for some reason I would prefer to find another word to describe it, but
yeah.
But ultimately it is that transition so that you have the strength of vulnerability as opposed to strength of force.
Oh, there's something else coming to mind and if I can try to put this together in my mind, because what you just said triggered that. For me, and it could be everyone, the idea of control. I realized that I have, okay, so let me just figure this out. I have no control in my life. Therefore, I try to control everything else around me. Mm-hmm. So as a child, I had no control in my life. As an adult, I have tried to control everything else around me. Now, the truth is, this was a realization I had this week, and it was just like, whoa. The truth is that I do have control in my life, but I have no control of the things around me. I only have control of myself. And that is taking responsibility. If I control who I'm being, and I don't mean like control, like you're going to, not the kind of control I've given myself, talking about like not crying. I told myself, I don't know when, I was like in my 20s or I was a teenager, I don't know, I will never cry again. I have an extremely hard time crying. And it is triggered by other people's pain, but not my own. But maybe that is my pain, the empathy, whatever it is. But I'm talking about when control of myself, meaning that I can actually let go of control. I can actually quit trying to control the world around me because I couldn't control it as a child. And the control I can have over myself is to relinquish that control, to actually stop myself, to just come from a place of, I'm kind of going into like maybe something Lujan taught, but I totally have it wrong. But to go from a place of doing to a place of just being doesn't mean I'm
so
accepting.
It sounds to me like if we wanted to say this in some problematic short way, that you can be basically saying is your message is let go so that you can go.
I like that. Let go so that you can go. I like that. And I think, let me just kind of put some of this down. So no control as children equals trying to control I guess our situation or the world around us, as adults. Yeah, we'll smooth everything out later. So no control as children equals trying to control the world around us as adults. If we what we really need to do is control ourselves. So and it doesn't mean
for the time being, that's language. I think as you do this longer, you will even deepen that language so that it won't necessarily, that you'll find that the ultimate in control is not even using the word control.
Well, right. And so
but it's just but I get exactly what you're saying is that the childhood experiences where we're bobbing on the ocean leads us to construct very, very intricate mechanisms for figuring out how to weather the storms, even though we technically just keep on surviving. So, you know, you're giving people, by letting go so that they can go, you're giving them a path from survival to thriving, right?
Right. Well, what I put here was what we really need to do is control ourselves by relinquishing control. So giving people, let me write that down, giving people
a path
from
surviving to thriving.
Path from giving people a path from surviving
to thriving.
Yeah.
And when you write your book, that'll be your subtitle.
I don't know my subtitle. I think I'm really digging this saying that something's got to give, that something is me.
Oh, that'll start a whole new conversation about giving and receiving.
When
you say there's something's got to give, you may have to receive to give, or you may have to receive for that thing to shift.
You may have to give to receive,
and you may have to receive to give.
Yeah.
So you may need to receive more from the universe so that something's got to give will give.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and we could have a whole conversation about that. I mean, it's just, you know, that could be a thing. So I am thinking about the Raw show.
The Raw show? You mean the Authentic BS Raw show?
I had this thought because it sounds like in so many ways what happens to us as we reveal the authentic story, we're kind of like killing the old stories. in so many ways, we are rebirthing, right? We are born again. We become this new being, even though it's always been there. We're revealing the new being, but still, nonetheless, it's kind of like the old version of us dies as the new one is revealed. Now, I like to talk about stories.
The old version of us dies as the new one is revealed. Okay.
Or some people will use the word created. I don't believe we can create our authenticity. I believe we need to reveal it. It's always there.
Okay.
Now that's my thing. I'm not forcing my beliefs on anybody, although I can be very assertive about my beliefs just because I'm going to say, some people will just resist what you say because whatever the language is or something that bothers them. But I should say the focus on what I'm saying there is that what if we were just the title of our experience is dead guys talking.
Dead guys talking. I like that. Dead guys talking.
And it's all about
dead guys dancing.
I like talking because it sounds like dead guys or dead guy walking, right? So, but so it has that alliterative thing in our English vocabulary. But it could be dead guys dancing, or maybe that's the next evolution. But anyway, dead guys talking appeals to me a lot because it seems like we can make it raw. We can make it truthful. It can really be about evolution and growth. Because as we're talking to say it the New York way, I sometimes have that New York accent leaks through. Talk.
You say something that the way you say rather, you say rather.
Rather.
But that sounds almost English. I don't know.
Rather. I'd rather do it this way.
No, it's there's like it's I've always given, I wonder if I have to bleep out these names, but I always give a hard time because the word orange is orange. That's how she said orange.
Oh yeah. And then I pronounce caramel.
Caramel. So do I. Yeah.
I just, I really can, like in India, there's a province called, it's spelled Kerala. Kerala. And apparently it's an amazing place. It's on my bucket list of places to go. So, like they got flower festivals and all kinds of cool stuff. But putting that aside, it's Kerala.
Mm.
I understand that I'm Americanizing it when I say that. Kerala, whatever the case may be, but it's Kerala. And so why can't we say caramel? Why can't we just, I'm not going, I'll go to the country of caramel, but I'm going to pronounce it caramel.
Okay.
Orange. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad we didn't talk about oranges?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you were saying something.
So dead guys talking seems like it would be an extraordinarily symbolic way to talk about or to title our conversations.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I think I'll call the channel Authentic BS though.
That's good. Do that.
Yeah.
And then the show could be called Dead Guys Talking. And then you might have something else you'll start doing on Authentic BS.
Okay. Well, let me see. Let me just see this text real quick. Okay, let me I think she forgot that I have the car. Okay, so I have to get the So yeah, we do need to be done by at least probably around. Yeah. Anyway.
Around what, noon time?
Noon or a little, yeah. Or even we can go a little later.
Okay, well, we'll play by ear. I don't want you straining the relationship over the car at the moment. So
no, it's not. It's all good. I mean, I am there. I mean, I'm leaning more into this like thing about getting a coaching thing class. And I do feel pretty strongly about that. There's, I rather have,
rather
yeah, I'd rather have this multiples in income income streams. I'd rather have multiple streams of information. And I don't know, there's just this idea of, I think we've already discussed it, but I'm really trying to narrow it down and really leaning towards one. But I have more questions to ask them before making a decision. But that the reason I'm bringing all that up is because that's pretty much that money is gone once I do that.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
I
let's put this in perspective. Is there's something to be said for making that commitment and just going.
for me, there is for sure.
Yeah, but there's also something that says I can make the commitment and go later and work on building more foundation for what you want to do, so that when you're doing that, it's crystal clear where you want to take it. Just you don't know all the necessarily the intricacies of how to do it. And you might along the way discover that you've got those intricacies way further understood than you thought, because the reason why you're even looking at that kind of courseware is there's so much uncertainty in terms of how do I get there.
Right.
Part of how you're going to get there is such an organic piece. It's not necessarily tutorial. Like, I don't believe people can. I've watched too many people. I've seen too many people, met too many people, experienced too many people who are in the life coaching business who shouldn't be. And I'm saying that with hopefully loving intent, because it's like you took a class, so now you're a life coach, but it didn't help. There's so much that, you don't have enough gray hair or stripes or experiences or anything like that to add to the mix. And on the other hand, there can be people who are young who are really good at this. I have some guy named Dana that I'm spending conversations with and things like that. He's got a lot. I mean, he's got a lot to learn. Don't get me wrong, but he's working at kind of at a different level, and he's coaching people energetically. And he's kind of proof positive that you just need to be 3 or 4 steps, or sometimes 1 step ahead of the people you're serving.
Yeah.
And because by the time he gets to my age, he's going to be extraordinary, as long as he sticks with the path. Now he went through the Proctor Gallagher system, to develop his experience and things like that, and he's kind of been he had some life experiences that helped him evolve fairly quickly, some tragedies in family and things like that. So do you. So it could very well be this course is exactly what you need. I just wanted you to frame the possibility for yourself that the money you need will come. Trusting in the universe will, that kind of thing. So it may very well be right now. The answer is get a car to further reduce the umbilical cord.
No, I get that. Well, I mean, I also think that this money is, I mean, honestly, though, I think this money is that the universe giving me that answer too, because the car thing is not a bad situation. Hey, I need to take a break for a moment. And then I will be right back.
Okay, I'll be here, I think.
Okay, I hope so. All right, so let me see if I can. I'm gonna do it like this time. All right, I'll be right back. Oh, did you stop the recording?
I temporarily suspended it. So.
I'm sorry, what?
I suspended it while you were away.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, do we like edit that stuff out? Like, I like
Nah.
took my phone with me, which is where the sound is coming from. I was like, oh wait, I gotta be quiet. Like, I don't want everyone to hear me going to the bathroom.
Like me at my
Yeah.
speaking engagement in Cleveland.
Yeah. So what is like, what is, I mean, what would we, what would you say is the next step? As far as, I mean, I know we're talking about like doing YouTube stuff and things like that, but just as like a,
Well,
as far as with,
looking at this in an organic way, it's first of all, there's a lot that happens in even these conversations we've had so far in terms of revealing more and more about what is likely to be your authentic path, right? So like in broad strokes, being a life coach, for example, yeah, great. There's tens of thousands of them, by the way. So, you know, my life coach credentials came from my hypnotherapy training and some other things that came, you know, that I did along the way. But I think what makes me an effective life coach isn't the life coach training. It's the understanding the human frame, which came from not just my training in hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming and other things like that. It came from my life.
right.
So, and you've got,
Right.
and so the whole point of doing this kind of work is to figure out how does your life attach to your ability to serve others, which is why those three questions,
Right.
the power of those three questions is really about three things. This one is identifying what you want to serve people with, why you want to serve them, and why you're the one to do it. And the third one is actually the most intricate part of the process, is really getting an understanding why you are the one to do it. Now, some of it will come from your story. Like when you're sharing with people that raw story about your history and what brought you to where you are, that's what's going to get people to connect and go, he's like me in every or many possible ways. And I can learn from him. I will work with him. So, you know, this whole idea, by the way, of doing this sort of serving it up as raw recordings that show evolution of the discussion and things like that. Well, that's going to give people an opportunity to understand why. I mean, you already say brilliant things. You already know brilliant things. You already, and some of this may be just letting it unfold before people's eyes, that you are now getting these revelations from the universe, because so much of what we say and do isn't really from us.
Right.
It's through us.
Yeah.
So when we're truly serving in the most profound way, where we're learning and teaching and doing both at the same time, it's really because what comes through us and what ends up being said, especially when we're in service to somebody or somebody's or others. And then we say these things, and it could be you learned it from Lujan, could be you learned it from David Data, could be you learned it from Brian Baird, it could be you learned it from other
I'm not
circles.
familiar with that last guy you mentioned.
No, well, you're lucky. You're a lucky guy. So, but anyway, but it could even be from, of all things, Dustin Payne.
Certainly not.
Doesn't ring a bell.
That's not, that doesn't, no. I don't know.
So the idea here is that you've got these things that will come through in when you're leaning in on being authentically in service, even if it's not something that gives you authority to talk about, you will still have an authoritative, valuable answer or adjustment or perspective or vector of information that will serve.
Yeah.
I've been doing this long enough to know that half the time the things that end up serving my clients, I hadn't ever talked about before, yet it served them.
Mm-hmm.
Why? because the universe has got your back. The universe is your secretary on these kinds of things. So this some of what we're talking about in this organic process is honing the message, developing the craft, understanding how to connect your story to help others and all those other things. But ultimately what's happening here is the organic mechanism for building confidence so that you can actually have a faithful, trustful step on letting the universe be your secretary. I can say that phrase to you, but it may not mean anything until you've experienced the universe saying, I got your back. And you go, the universe had my back.
Yeah, that's a big lesson for me. I've been living life from the perspective, not intentionally, like I don't go around thinking this, but I mean, in forms of it, in certain ways, I know I do. But that perspective of the universe is a friendly or hostile place. I think I live my life in that perspective that the universe is a hostile place, even though I know better.
Okay, so logically, you're aware.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't think there's any way for us to be 100% sure because of our human frame and limitations of sensory and observational powers that come with being in a human frame. And then I'm a person of deep scientific faith in science. So, I mean, I'm a person who's got deep faith in science. Science is always learning. Science is always improving. Science has, I won't say gotten things wrong, but has gotten things better along the way. And so I lived so much of my life about the certainty of science and the knowledge that we were accruing. So to have this kind of discussion about the universe being something other than this neutral or cold and calculating and dispassionate, disconnected thing, that was my history. I've got so much growing personal data over the last decade, for sure, maybe 20 years or so. Maybe over a lifetime, just some of the signals have been more unconscious and taken a long time to settle in. But my personal data increasingly shows that the source, the force, God, the universe, the omniscient, whatever and then maybe, maybe it isn't even all omniscient. It's just all everything. So when I'm using the word the universe, it could be somebody else's word is God, or or maybe some other Yahweh or whatever other label they want to put on it. I sometimes jokingly think the Star Wars movies have it more right than anything, because they're talking literally about the yin and the yang of the universe. So you could yield to a hostile universe and get nothing but hostility back, or you can yield to a loving universe and get nothing but love back, or perhaps something in between.
I think it's a space where all things are possible.
I think that is probably the richest way to look at it. That, yeah, I was, where was I? There was something I was watching recently. I've been studying, for lack of a better word, because I'm just fascinated by these people's energy and logic. So all over the internet are these videos that I've been watching, on YouTube especially, where we have these Karens and Kevins. And sometimes the Kevins are called Karens, or whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, whoever's named Karen now has probably got their name besmirched forever. But the idea is that you got these Karens and these Kevins who just kind of just become irrational, volatile, sometimes violent blobs of human beings. And they're making everybody crazy around them, and just making themselves crazier, because someplace deep down inside they must know that they're unhinged. There's just something gone off the rails with that. I also been watching these videos for people who are calling themselves sovereign citizens, and sometimes they call themselves auditors. And I think the challenge is there may be legitimate people who are auditing police activity and things like that, and who completely understand their legal rights and how to frame them. And they also understand the difference between the US Constitution and local states' rights and things like that. Those may be authentic auditors, but then there's a variation of those things we'll call frauditors, for lack of a better phrase, because they're out there just picking a fight with limited knowledge about the law and all this other stuff, thinking that they got rights. And they're digging into sometimes common sources. These sovereign citizens and these frauditors are sometimes playing, singing from the same songbook. And then there's another action in area of interaction I'm watching on the YouTube is police interactions. More and more of this is being recorded, whether it's external or on the uniforms of the officers. And you're getting a really good look at how many people who are in the police force have such fragile egos they should not be in police work. Now, there's also a lot of people I think maintain professionalism all the time, although it must be wearing to be a police officer doing traffic stops all day, like you hear every story on the book. But nonetheless, you have no choice but to be patient. That's your job. That's your profession. So I'm watching these people with all these various challenges with their ego, which is what it's really all about. In order to somehow or other feel good about themselves, they're creating all these extenuating, blown up scenarios that don't have to go that way. They don't have to be so ugly. And there's a part of me who just wants to go is like, how do you reach those people? How do you reach the police officer with a fragile ego who probably should not be policing? How do you reach this sovereign citizen who's so lackluster in their education, but think they're fully educated as they went to a website and downloaded a certificate that says they know what they're talking about? Or how do you deal with these Karens and Kevins out there who just somehow or other their life is so off the rails, they got to find somebody to bully. And inside of all this thing, it's boiling down to ego. Right. So what I like about the thing you're talking about does not mean that you and I can reach those people. But if you attack them directly, they won't change. But maybe you can soften them by having a loving message, which is what I think is powerful about what you're doing. Is that you're saying is that ego and control can go hand in hand. So what if your ego had a different kind of power framing it? Instead of power of force, it's power of authenticity, power of vulnerability, power of compassion, power of empathy, power of there's so much power out there that we often don't tap into. And I mean, in my own story, I find that if I have an interaction with a human being that's non-positive in the last few years, it's always because I failed to lean in on my authentic power, and I allowed fears and other things that come to the surface that make it so that it was escalated.
Well, two things that come to mind when you're talking about this is fears. It's always backed by fear. Mm-hmm. The actions of whatever these people, but I don't know what the answer is, and it's not coming to me, but I do know that incredible change happens inside people when it comes from a fear, and it's a fear of losing something, whatever that something is, their life, their custody of their child, their control, whatever it is. It's so great change comes from loss, which is backed by fear. And I don't want to say that is what needs to happen to these people. I know that change for me has come from fear. And it's not seeing the hurt I caused other people. It's the fear that I could lose those people. And so there's so many spiritual, I don't want to get caught up in the wording, but I'll just say spiritual teachers or whatever who have this story of like, I was just going through life and then I got really sick there's so many of them that have that story that they got really sick. They almost lost their lives and they woke up out of it. Like, I mean, I can name 5 right now that there's this event that happened to them. And it was like the light bulb turned on. It was like this awakening. And I always thought that's not necessary. But that is also a loss, which triggered this. So there's something there, and I hate to think that the way these people would change to get through to them, because I don't know, like, love is the answer, but it's not until somebody that's caught up in that what they're caught up in experiences something so traumatic in their lives that they wake up. And often that doesn't even do the trick. They just kind of dig in deeper. And so I know, though, that like I said, fear, loss, that sparks the major change.
And to attach to the framing to this, not all fear is of loss. Some fear is just of recurring pain or recurring exposure to those things that cause pain and things like that. But you're right, it's just that, the equation here is can we grow from the fear, or do we get stuck from the fear? Because fear can be very transformative, and fear can also be very disabling or paralyzing. So are we stuck on our fear, or are we transforming from our fear? And technically, this phrase has probably been more appropriately said, and it comes out of the Bible and some other religious scripts along the ways, is that pain is your transformative tool. It turns out fear and pain, in my opinion, have overlapping, if not exactly the same properties and energy. So if I have to deal with pain, I don't want that pain. If I have to deal with fear, technically I don't want that fear. Although both the pain and the fear can make me act in horrible ways. Maybe I beat everybody around me emotionally because I'm suffering. It doesn't matter what I'm suffering from. It's just I lash out because of my fear or my pain. So that's why I say there's very similar, if not outright the same energy. So, and that's what I think is going on with these Karens and Kevins and maybe the frauditors and even police with fragile egos who go into police work because it gives them some sense of validation. But all of that is control stuff wrapped around fear and pain. So you're dead on your money when you said you don't know the answer. You spit the answer out. So you did know the answer. All I did, by the way, is just add more language to it. But it's just you had the answer.
But I don't think that needs to be the driving force that makes the change. Why does a person have to experience that to change for the better?
I'll tell you from my own journey, and it may be everybody's journey. So is that what we end up having with is we get patterns of experience. The patterns often reinforce our beliefs, which are often attached to our fears. So when we're reinforcing our beliefs, we are really reaching for comfort. In fact, I'm working on a piece of video work right now, and maybe you can be part of this if you'd like to, is finding the harmony between comfort and growth. You don't get one with the other, yet you can't be always about enduring growth. Growth is a stretching thing, It's like this. It's like, you're a physically fit or fairly physically fit human being. So you know that if you go out for a run and you haven't run in a long time, you might end up with some sore thigh muscles or something. Go for a hike. You haven't hiked in a long time. Yeah. If all you ever had was sore thigh muscles, how could you possibly enjoy hiking?
Well,
so at some point you've got to have this harmony between comfort and growth, or comfort and discomfort, which leads to growth or leads to. But here's what the funny thing is: our joy isn't in the comfort. as human beings, we're content in the comfort, but our joy comes from the growth. So what you're saying is your work, from what I'm taking from this whole thing, is you're helping people figure out a way, for those who are aware enough to be interested, because there are going to be plenty of people who need what you have, but they are so reactive, so closed-minded, so closed-doored, so highly unaware that, and they will go to their grave that way. About half, I figure, my calculation is at least half the world, people will go to their grave in that reactive, unaware state. And so they served us with their journeys so we can learn from them. They themselves maybe have to come back and do something again. Or maybe that's what they're supposed to do this time around. And the learning process is how to be a jerk.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, so there's definitely pain with growth, for sure.
Or
it's uncomfortable.
Or say it's discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But that could all be reframed through perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's your job.
Yeah.
Think about it. Your message is saying, I have a perspective that can serve you. So when you say, what do you want to say to the world? Here's my perspective. And then you got the tagline. I don't know if you're going to live with those phrases, but right now, let's just go ahead and let go and go. The path from surviving to thriving type of thing. So
wait, what?
You wrote
I
that
got
down
let
already.
go so that you can go.
Yeah, you already wrote that down. I
thought you just said it differently. Let go.
No, I may have shortened it even further,
okay.
but I said, but I gave it the subtitle of, the path from
go
surviving
and go,
to thriving. So let go and go. So let go so you can go. Or let go and go, or both phrases. I mean, it could be your trademarked mantra for everything you're doing.
What if we called it Lego? Would that's a whole new word, I don't think. Or we can call it Yahoo or Google.
Yeah, go for it. See how long that trademark infringement case lasts. So the idea is that you've already got your message
right,
roughed out. It doesn't mean it won't have. And by the way, I mean, what I used to talk about 2, 3, 4 years, 10 years ago is not the same thing I talk about today.
Yeah.
The more the human condition is revealed to me, the more the human frame and experience is revealed to me, it's changing how I'm dealing with people. Because at one time I would just watch these Karen and Kevin videos and just go, what bunch of assholes. Now I find myself going, what could be done to help them? They're clearly unhappy people. You don't go off that unhinged that way without having some alignment challenges going. And I'm not blaming them for their alignment stuff. I don't know what was handed to them through their childhood. I don't know what their journey is to that very moment. I would venture many of them have very, very, very unhappy home lives. Maybe pretend home lives. They think they're on outside, they'll curate the image of their home life being perfect, but deep down inside, they're lonely, alienated, invalidated, unheard, whatever those things are. Because you think about what makes somebody express themselves so volatilely to do that is that they're probably just not feeling validated.
They're lashing out,
mm-hmm.
And they're not lashing out at the true perpetrator. They're lashing out at.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it makes them look racist much of the time. Makes them look uneducated. It makes them, some of these people are lawyers, and they're just blowing up about their coffee came in the wrong cup or something, and then they start yelling things like, go back to your country, or other vile things. And then it's like, I don't want to embrace those vile things that come out of them, because they're saying things that deep down inside somehow or other they've come to believe. The question is can they be saved from that place? And one of the stark realities that I've had to come to grips with is that, and it's happened to me a couple of times when I have been very assertive about trying to help somebody, but they are already in a place where they're just not, their resistance is so high. I'm a villain for just simply
Right.
offering to help. So, you know, so one of the things you're going to need to be doing in this experience here is realizing that you've got this evolving platform with some great starting points, and you know, and you have, I know your story, so you have a compelling story that will become part of the third question, and you know, and the evolution of things. There are actually subsidiary questions to questions 1, 2, and 3, but they will come up during the organic processing of this thing, so that you end up with so much clarity.
Right.
You end up with so much clarity to these 3 questions, and then the sort of the depth underneath them that you will probably never overtly share with a large public, because not to get, it's just because it would be too confusing, not because it's not truthful, not because it won't help. As people move along through your platform and are in it longer, then they can get that deeper dive. So we haven't even begun to explore these additional subsidiary questions, and at this time it's not even appropriate to even think about, you know, to go further than just talking about it. But the idea is in this whole thing is that those 3 questions are the things that are going to illuminate your purpose and give you clarity, and even for that matter, help deepen your passion. Because if the thing you want to talk about isn't striking you with passion, then that's not exactly the message. That may be pointing to it, but it may not be the message.
Right. Well, it makes sense. And I know this will be, I mean, yeah, this will definitely be, well, I don't even know what the expression or the word is, but it will become clear and more dialed in. And I realized, like, I didn't answer the, why am I the one to tell them? It's because that's, to me, it's so obvious. It's because this has been, that's what my experience is. I'm the one to tell people because I've lived this. I haven't lived it. I am living it.
Right.
I am, it's a continuing thing. So, I mean, you said it's the most important.
Well, it's the question that it's the question that illuminates your part of this, because somebody else could be having the same conversation with the audience with questions 1 and 2.
Okay.
So, and then when you really lean in on the third question, that's where you start to reveal your clarity and your passion.
Right.
And it becomes a feedback loop, because if you're not getting quite that level of passion, then you go back and go, well, maybe my message for the world is a little different than I'm saying it so far. I think we've got a pretty good start, if not dead on, for what you're about. So whether this is the final version of what you're going to talk about, because, you know, ultimately right now, since you are a writer, you could probably start taking this title and subtitle of your message and start crafting a book.
Well, and I don't know if that's what I want to do. I mean, that's, you know, like, I was listening to that audio, I mean, recording of like, kind of what's the coaching about, and the lady was saying, she's like, I am like one of the only people around me that hasn't written a book because I hate to write, but I love to public speak. I'm an extrovert, and I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know.
Well, you have a tendency to, when you write, I've only read part of the second story, and but I'm saying is that
completely re-edited.
But inside of that material that you did share with me, I saw learning things going on for the reader and even for the author, right? So so I was looking at those things. So what
are you talking about, like the first story, the pig story?
That was one story, and there was a second one that I don't remember all the details of. That was,
oh, like the fourth?
Don't recall.
These stories have been drastically.
There's no reason to discuss that you had to edit it, because all it just means is that you're adding elements of value to the story and things like that. But the point I'm making here is that maybe when you write a book, and I'm going to encourage you to consider that this theme that's come to the table as your message, maybe when you write the book, you'll write it with fictional characters and you'll tell a story as opposed to preach. I'm not suggesting you write a story like everybody else does, and your book is your business card.
Right.
So the person who says, I have never recorded, she should have interviewed somebody and had a ghost written for her. Because that is a credibility tool. That is an authority
what is
tool.
that? What did you say about the person who wrote?
You said there's somebody who said, I never wrote a book because I hate writing, or I prefer public speaking, whatever the case may be. Look, I'm not saying she hasn't built herself an audience in the process of doing what she's doing, but I will point out that books, for whatever reason, and I say for whatever reasons, I feel like I understand why, but it's just sometimes even when I think you understand why, it's kind of like, well, why is a book more important than a video? But for some reason, the action of writing a book and putting thought to it and getting those words into print gives you instant credibility and instant authority.
Mm.
So, you know, and I say this because I'm helping other people write their books. I've got my own books to finish, but and I'm not writing my books per se for that credibility and authority thing, but I will say that as I'm developing my messages inside of the book, because I have this overall grand message, which is going towards that thing, and we have some common line. We're helping people build their authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Reveal is more of a better phrase, their authenticity, by helping them release those things that are not serving them anymore. They may have served them when they were 4 or 14 or even 24, but now at age 44 or whatever they are, they're stuck because those stories still are playing a role, and they're just holding them back. So, you know, and there are lots of other conversations going on out there, like, you know, Awaken the Giant Within, which is the Tony Robbins platforms, you know, all these other things that are out there. And it's just, you know, your message, your story is what rounds out why you're the one to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, and when you're writing now, you're writing in pieces of fiction, right? So what happens if you're telling a truthful story inside of a fictitious frame? What if you're just metaversing it, so to speak? And then when you write it, you're bringing people into your universe or metaverse or whatever else you want to call it, so that they can still learn from the story, and it has nothing to do with you preaching to them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That I mean, that's the whole idea of this, you know, putting these recordings up and letting people see the process, because I don't want to. I mean, when we had our blog in the past, it was like I was writing from the perspective of, I've got this figured out, and that I don't like that, because it's not real and I don't actually have it figured out. It was, my biggest thing has been like, how do I figure myself out? What is my purpose? Like, how do I, like, I don't think there's ever a time where it's like, oh, I finally figured it out, you know, like, we're good now. It's, you know, it's,
and by the way, it shifts with nuance.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more, and there will be deeper perspectives on your whys than that might never be brought public, just because there's just not enough time to bring people to that level of experience that will allow them to fully understand that nuance.
Right.
But, you know, so you look at like Lujan, as you mentioned him before. Lujan's message to you with your recent work with him might have been completely different 20 years earlier.
Of course.
Because Lujan was learning on the way, and you know, and because you have a powerful brain and have a very good understanding of the intellectual side of this stuff. So talking the talk, as I would call it. What's been beautiful about your journey, and as you continue to do this, is the more than you're walking the walk. Because you've always had the capacity to have any conversation in this realm that we've been talking. But now you're starting to feel it. Well, I shouldn't even say now, you've been feeling it. And because of your feeling part of the journey, it's heightening the talk to talk because there's walk the walk attached to it. I don't know if I'm making myself clear on this, but the idea is, the Dalai Lama says the journey of your lifetime is from your head to your heart. You've had a head-based journey. I've been there. I know that journey so well, because that's like, so that's why I recognize it for what it is. And then, and very much like me, you've been having this revelation of the heart aspect of who we are, that place of sensitivity, that place of compassion, that place of authentic, unconditional love, that place of personal power, that place of personal truth, and your ability to develop faith and trust in those things that are centered around all this power and love and all those other things. All of that's now becoming clear to you because you're now feeling it. When we first started talking, 4 years ago, not quite 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, you knew a lot up here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean by the developing nuance, because the young guy I was talking about before, he knows a lot and he's starting to feel it. I'm not coaching him. He's not my client. I'm just, I love being connected to him. So I love watching him evolve. So, and he's highly productive and gets a lot of stuff out there and things like that. I don't always agree with what he says because he doesn't have the same journey as me. I feel like I've got a few more gray hairs to help deepen my understanding and nuance of things, both at the head level and the heart level. But he's getting there, and so are you. We're all works in progress. We're all dead guys walking. And what I really mean by dead guys walking is we're all aiming for a rebirth, which is the revelation of who we authentically are. The true version of us gets born by revelation. It's not a creation thing. In my opinion, it's not a creation thing. I don't believe you can create an authentic person. I believe it's already there. So.
Yeah, it's just a transformation. So what's my homework?
Well, let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a
time?
different kind of question.
Oh, it's only 12.
Yeah, but it's only 12, but you do have other responsibilities. I saw in terms of these three questions, let's not quite table them, but we'll let them sort of simmer in the background.
Okay.
So that the next 3-question thing is, what are you passionate about?
Okay, so these are okay. Okay.
Why are you passionate about it? Which may be more challenging than you think. And why are you, the framing on this is going to be a little different than I've done in the past because of the conversations we've had so far. So what are you passionate about? Why are you passionate about it? And how do you envision serving with your passion? And it could be in anything. You're writing, one-to-one coaching,
Okay, let me look at these real quick. What am I passionate about?
And it could be more than one thing. There's not like just one answer.
I mean, there's things I really enjoy, and I'm extremely happy when I'm writing my stories. But I'm not even, I don't know that I feel true passion for anything, really, honestly. I mean, at this point,
And that's okay. That's a valid
okay,
answer, but nonetheless, take your best shot at it. Because
okay,
if you're not yet seeing what you're passionate about, that speaks very highly for why you might be in a sort of a more of an evolutionary step than you think. That, like studying coaching all day long and not knowing what you want to coach about can be, and I realize they're probably going to try to help you with this, but the thing here is that without passion about how you serve, then your message may either be invalid or never received, because people will feel
right.
this.
I know I get passionate about things when I do speak. Like, it's like I can give a passionate speech, but are my actions may not show that. And
Can I describe passion for a second here in terms of, first of all, the word passion actually is a very recent English language word, or very
okay.
recent word in general. Turns out passion came about in the English language because of nailing Jesus to the cross. So
Okay.
you've probably heard the phrase passion of Christ.
Mhm.
But what we call passion today, which is like enthusiasm and excitement and all those other things,
Mhm.
is really a commitment to enduring pain in Jesus' time. The word was invented around Jesus. And now I'm not particularly religious. I just want to give you the origin of the word passion. So when we talk about passion, it's not always like explosive excitement or
Okay.
romance or things like that. It could be, it's something that you need as much as air.
I know what it is then. The answer is so simple. I think I've said this before. I struggled for a long time to figure out what it is I want to do. Like, what is my passion? That I struggled with that. Like, what the hell is my passion? And I realized that was my passion. When you said that, it all made sense. I'm passionate about figuring out what my passion is.
Well, that's beautiful. It seems very circular in one way and very rich in other ways. I kind of like that. So the thing that's going to be trickier here, just like the third question and the first three questions, is the most challenging one is how are you going to serve people with that?
Well, that's okay. Well, let me.
I don't want the answer today because I want you to think about it. But it's just
well, that's going back to those other questions. That's part of how I want to help people, is people figure themselves out. Like I think when we talked last week, it's like the walls have come down now. Like, who am I? What's my purpose? Why am I? And that's the idea. It's like, I want to, let's figure that out.
Okay.
And I'm figuring it out. And that's why maybe this isn't as, yeah, I just wrote that down and I can run with that, but.
Right. So you understand, like, every time the third question is going to really help you explore yourself.
Right.
How are you going to serve with this information is very different than saying, I've got this idea.
Right.
So, or very different, I feel this idea, which could be another vector, or even both are included, seeing and feeling and thinking and whatever. So, so it's just like how to serve with your passion. So if we go back to Jesus on the cross, the service of that was in terms of the theme that I understand from Christianity, which I kind of grew up in, although I don't practice, is that was about the greatest gifts of love by sacrifice.
Right.
So that's what the passion of Christ was.
Right.
Well, and I'm sure there are other people with deep theological backgrounds who may dispute what I'm saying, but that's my take on what's going on. So please don't, anybody's hearing this, don't come back and start chewing me out for, that's my perspective. That's my truth. So, so how to serve with your passion is going to be, is like, whether it's an endurance thing you got to do, but you need it more than air, or something you're very passionate about in terms of excitement, or whatever the case may be, or however the word passion clings to you. How you serve is going to be your biggest piece of homework on this. Okay.
Okay. I'm just thinking about like the recordings and like, so is it going to see your screen because you're recording it?
I think we'll be side by side. I could be wrong. It could be
But
speaker
there's
point of
this
view.
third image down here, and I'm wondering, like, maybe I need to get those headphones you're talking about.
Yeah.
Are they?
I'll send you a link from Amazon. They're
And what is this? What are these headphones?
They're made by Logitech. They're a $30 to $50 purchase, and
But is it just something that I plug into the computer?
USB port.
Oh, see, damn. Yeah, it's not going to work.
You have
because
a USB port.
I have one working USB port. I don't have the second one. We've tried to fix it. I can't. It's dead.
So the alternative would be to spend a bit more money on a Bluetooth headset.
And I do have, well, those ones that I was using before are, but they sounded really weird. I have another set that somebody
Here,
gave me.
Let me
that
stop
might
the
work.
recording here. This is not going to be of much value anyway. Stand by.